Welcome back to the channel. So the last time we made these springs for the exhaust and the intake, wound those on the lathe using a mandrel and using the lead screw with the different pitches for the intake and the exhaust. We got the seats cut in the head and got these valves lapped in, and we got everything sealed up nicely. It's got a nice bounce to it. So the next thing we're going to start working on is just continue on down, and we'll start working on this rocker arm for the exhaust. So the rocker arm is made from steel according to the plans. I have seen some pictures of some engines online where this was made out of brass, but we're going to attempt to make it out of steel. So there's a lot of machining that needs to take place here. There's a lot of shapes and profiles, but the main critical points is going to be this center hole here, the distance between here to here for this center hole that gets tapped, drilled and tapped for a screw to adjust for the clearance, and then the distance between here to this pad, and the pad's a 1/4 inch wide. That's not super critical, but that needs to be pretty close. And then these distances here, so when we put the rocker arm onto this bracket here, that it lines up with the exhaust valve. We don't want it to one side or the other. The rest of it is somewhat superficial. This gets rounded on the end, machined down. So I think to start with, I'm going to figure out what the largest block of material is that I need in order to make this out of. And then we're going to lay out a lot of scribe lines. And I'm going to scribe and I'm going to center punch this hole for here, laying on the side, and then figure out where the center line, everything is kind of dimensioned off of this center line here. That's what we're going to work off of. And then we're going to figure out this center line and then punch this hole. So then we'll go ahead and drill and ream out this hole for the screw that we made earlier, that rides on this screw. And then we'll go ahead and drill this hole, probably go ahead and tap it. I'm not sure. We may wait till we get some of this machined off before we tap it, but we'll go ahead and drill that for the tap drill size. And then once we get that kind of established, then we'll just start whittling the rest of it out. This will get machined out down here with a radius, and then I haven't decided yet whether I want to do this center section here. Could be done on a rotary table, or there may be a way to put this in the lathe and actually turn this profile, and then it gets relieved on the back side, and there's a little bit sticking out there, and then this will all get machined down and radiused on this edge here, and then machined down where this pad is. But like I say, to start with, we're going to figure out the largest size material that I need and get that machined down to overall size, and then do layout lines on it to get these holes established, and then we'll decide from there. Some of this profile will probably get finished up and kind of clearanced and blended together with the die filer. But first thing we'll do is get that, and then we'll probably knock out this big section here and knock out this section here down to this pad, and then see where we're at that point. But we don't want to get into a situation where we have machined away so much that we can't hold on to it anymore. However, with this hole, going ahead and getting this hole drilled down through there, we still always have the option of bolting it down to a plate, putting a bolt through here and tightening it down, and then we can put a clamp out here somewhere just to keep it from spinning. But we'll figure that out as we go along. Well, it's starting to look like a rocker arm. So a lot of work to get to this point. So the first thing I did was put that material in there and then put it in the shaper and got it to overall size. Then I did some layout lines on here because I wanted to go ahead and get this hole drilled and reamed here for the rocker arm bolt to go through. And then I wanted to get this hole drilled and tapped here for the screw that actually pushes against the valve. This is where we'll do our adjustment. Those are the two critical items, that the distance between here to here is correct. And then you also need the distance between here and where this pad is to be correct, and then this to be really close, although that is an adjustment. There will be a screw in there. So I did the layout lines, drilled, reamed this, drilled and tapped this, and then there's a radius in here, which I knew where that was because I had this line here and a radius in there, and I had this line. So I took and lined up a drill bit that was pretty close to this radius, and then drilled these holes through here in the corner. And then I came in and bandsawed above my lines and took that material out there. Then I put it in the lathe, and to turn this section here, I had an arbor that a bolt would fit through this just perfect and tight and on an arbor. So we were at this thickness here, so I machined this down to this surface here, which is not the final depth. I still need to clean that up, but I machined this down to the diameter that we need to be at there. And then I flipped it over, and then I machined a little bit here. This gets machined down quite a bit to this surface here, but my tool was not deep enough to plunge into there. The end of it was hitting this material here, so I need to get set up a different cutter and go back and cut this and clean up this material around this boss and clean up this material around this boss, and then I'll finish it up. Then once I did that, I set it up in the mill and then came in here with an end mill and then machined this off to the final height that we need here. And then I knew the distance between here to here, so I come in here and machined this off and finished this pad off. Then I mounted it in the milling machine in this direction and then started machining out. I knew how thick it needed to be here, so I machined out this section here down to the final width. So this is a 1/4 inch wide here and an 1/8 of an inch here, so we took a 1/16 off of each side. Machined that off and machined this off, and then machined as much as I could off here around this boss. Did the same thing, flipped it over, machined out all of this. That left us with this back section here, which I wanted to leave on so that we could clamp it into the vise in between the jaws. And then scribe me some lines, and then there's a radius here off the edge of this, or off the center of this. And then I just bandsawed that off, took it to the belt sander and cleaned that all up. Got a nice blend there. Then a combination of belt sander and the die filer, I kind of blended in all this radius to here and this radius to here, and then rounded this section off here. This gets completely rounded off. I still need to do a little bit more work on it with some files. I just kind of got it roughed in everywhere. But that's gonna finish it up, except for machining this down here. We'll set that back up in the lathe, but let's see how it's gonna work. So one thing that I did discover when I was doing this layout is these plans are wrong. If you look at this, this is correct here. But if you flip this over like this, it has the long side of this boss here being on the right hand side and the short being on the left. That will not work. Those need to be flipped the other direction. Now if you've bought the castings from Mini Steam and you're following along, I don't know what the plans look like for them, if they've been fixed and been reversed. These are the original Paul Breisch plans, but that is completely wrong. It needs to be on the other side. You need to flip those, and we'll put it on here and I'll show you why. You need clearance for this intake valve. So if you've got it like this, then you can see that it's going to hit right in the center on the exhaust valve, and you've got all that machined out for clearance for the intake valve. If you had the short side down there, and then that also lines it up with the exhaust valve. If you had the short side down here, then that would move it down somewhere like this, and then it would be way too low. It would it would not be on the center of the exhaust valve. Actually the edge of it there would be right at the edge of the valve. So that's why, and I looked at some pictures online of some other engines that some people have built. That's kind of when I first noticed it. I thought, oh, that's different than the plans. So that's when I got to looking at it and realized that the boss is on the wrong side, so you just need to flip them. So if you're looking at it from the top side, you need the long side on the left and the short side on the right. So let's bolt this down here, just get an idea of what it's going to look like. Get a screwdriver and tighten that up a little bit. All right, so there we go. See how that works. So we still need to, like I say, put it back in the lathe, and we'll finish this whole section up here, get this all rounded off and down to the same surface, and then we'll make a screw that goes into here, and then it needs a spherical end on it. Probably end up just welding up the end of a screw, and then we'll just shape that into a round section that gets a lock nut on the top. And then the push rod will come from here and then push on this, and then that's what'll open the exhaust valve. And looks like we're lined up pretty good. It's pretty much dead on the center of that exhaust valve. So that definitely shows you that you need the long side on this side on the bottom and the short side on the top. That's good that we've got everything else in line and machined properly. So that lines up good there. And then this looks like it lines up pretty good with this. So there'll be a arm, there'll be a push rod that comes in it that'll rub right here. There's a block that it goes into, and it'll come straight down to here. That looks like it's going to hit good, and in the center of that. So that all looks good. That's going to do it for this episode. Next time we'll get this back in the lathe and then finish cleaning all this up, do a little bit of file work and get this thing looking good, and then that'll have it finished off, and then we'll continue on down with the push rod and these brackets. Thanks for watching.